bringing the web back to the blind. I want you all to pretend like I'm blind. How many of you have ever used a screen reader? I can't see your hands. You're going to have to do something else. How many of you have used a screen reader? Thank you. All right, I'm not blind anymore. But that underscores my point behind this whole talk, is that there are people with whom you need to interact differently than what you're used to. And most of us developers are not very good at accessibility. And I hope that I can inspire you guys to go home from this talk and do some real-world things in your applications for no other reason than that it's the right thing to do. So the title of this talk, Bringing the Web Back to the Blind, we have a blind developer at Instructure who's on my team. He's actually a front-end engineer, and pretty much everything that we write has to go through him and make sure that it's accessible. And I talked to him about what it was like with the web showing up and progressing as it has, especially where JavaScript has gotten more and more complicated. So the web in the beginning was very simple. In fact, a lot of people just used the links browser and would browse the web that way, and it was great. And all of the information that we all have access to was available to the blind, as well as those who are sighted. But as our JavaScript interfaces got worse and worse, more and more websites started to get harder and harder to use. Then there was a really dark period in the middle where Flash was all over the place and absolutely nothing was visible pretty much to blind users. And we're kind of headed back to that again with all of these JavaScript interfaces. So please join me in bringing the web back to the blind. What does the word accessible mean? Able to be easily obtained or used. Read a study where blind young people took up to 11 minutes to find out the following day's weather forecast.
VoiceOver on Safari, Google window, search text field has keyboard focus. Entering search landmark, search text field. Google search button, I'm feeling lucky button, leaving search landmark, times, clickable.
Times. Are we doing math?
You are currently on a text element inside of HTML content.
Okay.
Google search text field.
So
Muting.
We're not doing math, right? That's Google's close button. Don't do that.
Field inside
right.
of HTML. Weather.
All right, I'm going to search for the weather.
Collapsed menu pop-up link, apps, link, sign in, link, St. Patrick's Day, weather, Google search button, web, link, news, link, maps, link, shopping, link, images, menu more one item, more, search tools button, list one item, collapsed pop-up button, about 397,000,000 results, 0.24 seconds. Heading level 2, search results, list 20 items, Salt Lake City, UT 84111. Monday 3:00 p.m. Mostly cloudy. Undefined image, 42 degrees F. Link, degrees C. Precipitation, 40%. Humidity, 44%. Wind, 18 mph. Temperature, precipitation, wind, 42, 43, 37, 37, 34, 36, 34, 41, 45, 43, 39, 37, 34, 36, 37, 48, 55, 54, 48, 45, 43, 41.
Anybody know what he's talking about?
57, 57, 48, 43, 37, 37, 41, 50, 52, 52, 46, 37, 37, 39, 43, 50, 55, 54, 50, 46, 43, 43, 43.
No.
54.
It's the weather.
55, 57, 50, 46, 43.
Let me speed it up.
57. 6 p.m. Not 1-2 a.m. Clickable. 3 a.m. Clickable. 6 a.m. Clickable.
So all those numbers were for times in the month. So if I get
You are
this
currently
back
on a text
here,
element inside of a list. Voiceover off.
and I click on these, that thing scrolls, right? And he's reading all these numbers for the next 10 days, almost days. So anyway, there was a lot of stuff to hear before I could get to Tuesday's weather. Let me bring this back in.
Voiceover. Weather. Google search. HTML. Interact with. Link. Weather. 9:12 p. 3 p.m. When?
There we go.
Chant. Mun. Clickable.
Mun.
3. Tuesday.
Oh, he's got
Clickable.
Tuesday.
3. Wednesday. Click.
But Mun, I like that one.
Mun. Clickable.
Mun. So what's frustrating about this interface is that there's no way for me
You
to
are
skip
currently on a
past.
text element inside of a list. Voiceover off.
There's no way for me to skip past all that garbage and get to some UI that's probably more important than a list of numbers that make no sense to a screen reader. So we can tell that even Google is not the best at this, at least not with that interface. A little bit more information. You guys probably, you can read that. In the UK, more than a fifth of young married couples first met online. A fifth of people who are married. A quarter of jobs are only advertised on online, and the average person spends way too much time on Facebook. In stark contrast, nearly 40% of disabled people have never used the internet, accounting for half of all the people who've never been online. Can you imagine trying to get a job if the job website is like that Google weather thing? By not having accessible websites, we are totally making people's lives harder than they already are. So let's make some accessible websites and make people's lives a little bit better. Sometimes it's easy to say, well, only 3%, or not 3%, only some like tiny percentage of people are blind that use our website, so it doesn't make sense for us to work on it. You've got to remember that while that number is very tiny to you, it is enormous to that person. How many people are we talking about? Here's the United States. Anyone from Wyoming? Anyone from New Hampshire? Whatever that is. North Dakota. And then the other one. Delaware. Colorado. Probably got someone from Colorado here. Rhode Island. I lived in Rhode Island for a while. And Vermont, the cousin of New Hampshire. About 7 million people have visual disabilities in such that they need tooling to help them on their computers to use the internet. All those states, that's like every visually disabled person lives in those states. That's a lot of people. There's more than just blind users to think about. There's, of course, screen reader users by the blind. There are Braille displays, which have like 2 rows of Braille that it's kind of cool. You see the blinking cursor, and it's just these little bumps that keep going up and down. Screen magnification for people that aren't blind, but they need a really big screen to see what they're looking at. Colorblind. There are people who use only keyboards. They can't use a physical mouse because of some motor impairment. And then vice versa. There are people who can only use a mouse and can't use a keyboard because of some impairment. Some people need dictation because they can't read. There are some really heightened, extreme cases of dyslexia where it's not just like words, but like everything is flipped around backwards for them. And so they need something to dictate to them. Closed captions and then head pointers. You can Google that and see those, but it's literally like straps on your head, and then you got this big stick that comes off of your head, and you point with your head. So those old Flash websites with the 3-pixel fonts and buttons, there's no way they could click any of those. So lots of things to consider, but we're just going to talk about screen reader users for the next 20 minutes. So first, to understand how to make a website accessible, it's nice to know how screen reader users get around, and also I hope that you guys will try to use, I see a whole bunch of Macs here, I hope that you'll try to use VoiceOver and learn how to use your website with a screen reader. There's just a couple of things that you need to know, and you can make your sites infinitely better for others. So they mostly get around using headers, landmarks, links, and form fields. So the goal is to make those things good and make them make sense. Here is some code showing some of those elements. One that you probably don't know about is landmarks. So if I say that this role is banner, then I'm making a banner landmark, which is just kind of a big spot on the page that's easy for the screen reader to get to. Also got role navigation. You've probably used this and maybe not known why. You remember how the Google page said Mon instead of Monday? You can just drop an aria label on any element and have it say what you actually want it to say. Instead of Mon, then it would say Monday if I drop Monday into here, into aria label. So anyway, these roles all create landmarks on the page. There are some HTML5 elements that will do this automatically for you, like the main element. You don't have to do role main on a main element. That tells the screen reader that this is the main element on the page. And I think we've got role complementary here. Same thing with the aside tag. That'll tell the screen reader, hey, this is just complementary information. The header tag means it's a banner, etc. So here is a demo page. Let's get rid of everything and do this again.
VoiceOver on Safari. Aria landmarks demonstration in XHTML window. Aria landmarks demonstration in XHTML. Aria landmarks. Aria landmarks demonstrate. Interact with Aria landmarks demonstration in XH. Aria landmarks in XHTML banner.
So here I'm on the banner, and to get around the page, you do Control Alt and then the arrows, and then that's sort of like you're moving your mouse around across the page and changing your focus, and that's what it will read. And when you have these landmarks, especially sibling landmarks, it doesn't go down into the contents of a landmark. It just tells you what the landmark is, and then when you go to the next thing, it takes you to the next landmark rather than listening to a list of 300 numbers. So let me unmute this again.
Site navigation, navigation.
Then I go next.
Search this site with 3 items.
Next.
Subscribe to our newsletter group with 5 items.
Next.
Aria invalidation with 2 items. Main content with 21 items.
So this is really handy. I can just jump around between all of these spots. And now if I want to hop into one, so as soon as I find the main content, then I do Control Alt Shift down, and then that tells the screen reader, hey, I want to go into this landmark and actually read what's there.
To interact with item, entering main content, main landmark, 21 items. Interact with main content with 21 items. Main, 21 items, heading level 1, main content. This tutorial demonstrates how to add Aria landmarks to a web page to aid in accessibility. List 8 items. Bullet application, not covered in this demonstration. Bullet, internal link. Bullet, internal link, complementary, muting.
Okay. So you can see landmarks make it really nice to get around the whole page and get an idea. When we can see this visually, we get that immediately because we see all of this design and say, okay, here's a sidebar, here's this, and the visual designers have focused us toward the main content. So a second way that they get around is what's called the web rotor in VoiceOver, but in other screen readers it may be called something else. But you can pull up a list of all the landmarks or a list of all the headers and things like that. So let me demonstrate that real quick.
Links, 22 items.
So I pull up this list, shows me there's these links, and now I can navigate through them.
Now link, now, banner. Headings, 12 items.
Now I can look through all the headers.
Form controls, 6 items. Web spots, 0 items. Landmarks, 6 items.
So probably the primary way screen reader users get around is with headers.
Links,
those
headings,
tend to be
items.
The best, like without us really thinking too much about our code, we do a pretty good job with headers. You've probably heard that you need to do your headers in order and not use them just for visual display, but actual, like the organization of your page. The reason why is there are keyboard shortcuts to jump from one header to another and keyboard shortcuts to jump to the next header of the same level. So if I'm on a heading level 3 and then I hit M, then M will move me to the next H3 and then the next H3. And that's useful for them because they don't get to see the visual hierarchy of your document or your app. Instead, they just get what you said is an H1 and is an H2. So that's why those are important to have in order and to have things that are on a similar level to actually have a similar, or the same, not similar, but the same heading level.
Internal link, complementary.
Okay, buddy.
Off.
That's enough for now. Sometimes you want to display things to a screen reader user versus a sighted user. Some of those scenarios are you want to hide something from everyone, hide something from just sighted users, hide something but allow it to be focused. You may have seen these like skip to main content links on some web pages that will then jump you down to the main content. You don't want that to show up until someone tabs to it, and then it will show up. And you may want to hide something from the screen reader users. So something that really doesn't matter. The designers just thought it was pretty. I just pulled these from the HTML5 boilerplate. They're good. They work really well. So we can just look at these real quick. So hidden, this will hide it from everybody. If you do display none, visibility hidden, the thing is gone. A screen reader user won't hear this read to them. A sighted user won't see it. Visually hidden, this means that you want the screen readers to see it. In Structure, we call it screen reader only. Either way, this is obviously CSS did not ever have this in mind, so we had to do really strange things to make it happen. But just grab this from HTML5 boilerplate, and if you want it read to the screen reader and not to somebody else, do it. Very common scenario for this is when you use like a font tag or SVG for your icons. They're going to get like who knows what, something super weird, or even like times from the Google page. So inside of that, if you're using Bootstrap and you have I for these icon tags, inside of that icon tag you could drop in a span with visually hidden and then type out what that thing is. So new document or new user or delete, things like that. And then they've got the visually hidden focusable for skip to main content links. And then you don't need CSS to hide something from a screen reader. You can just drop in an aria hidden equals true, and that will just tell the screen reader, don't read this. Screen readers, a lot like browsers, all behave a little bit differently, so on occasion it may still read those, but you can still trust it and just say that screen reader is garbage and it's not your fault. So that's the easy stuff. This is the stuff that you should be doing just because you're not a horrible person. The hard stuff are the rich JavaScript-driven interactions. Everything we've talked about so far is just simply letting the screen reader user get around the page. So let's look at the hard stuff. I feel really bad about this, but I'm pulling in Bootstrap. Goodbye.
VoiceOver on Safari. Interact with Bootstrap tabs aren't very accessible. Frown. HTML content.
I said frown. Did you hear that?
Visited internal link. USA.
Internal link.
Visited internal link. Japan.
Japan.
Visited internal link. Texas.
Okay, so far I'm thinking I've got some nav at the top of this page.
You are currently on a link.
And it's going to then have like paragraphs for each one of these somewhere else on the page, right? Because it said internal link.
End of list.
Okay.
The United States of America, USA, commonly referred to as the United States, US. Source. Visited link. Wikipedia.
Where'd those other bits of content go?
You are currently on a link inside the muting.
It's confusing, right? So, what's the problem? The problem is that content's hidden. So now let's say, and this is what a lot of blind people have to do, I have to figure out, okay, I bet that this is Bootstrap. So I'll just go click the link and cross my fingers and hope that the content shows up. All right, so I already heard USA.
Japan.
So now let's click this.
Press. Visited internal source. Visited link.
Where's the information about Japan? Did you see that? How
You
it
are
skipped
currently
right
on a
over
link
it?
Inside of H.
So if I go back
Japan is
to
an island nation in East Asia.
Now I get it.
Located in the Pacific Ocean, it lies to the east of the Sea of Japan.
So now if I come back up and I hit Texas,
Press.
it skips over the Texas content, and now I have to go back one, and then I get to it. I don't know if all screen readers would do this, but the problem is the code that renders, that shows that next tab isn't fast enough or something. There's some sort of race condition between the screen reader and a Bootstrap to where when I go to the next element to read, it just jumps right over it. So how many people use Bootstrap tabs? A whole lot of people. It's all over the internet, and it's an interface that's totally broken for blind users. Our developer, of course, he can figure these things out because he inspects element and then is like, oh, there's the element, and then like makes it show and then reads things. but that's a lot to ask of most people.
Silver off.
Progressive enhancement. Don't throw tomatoes at me, but most of the time you're screwing things up. We get these false fuzzies that we're doing it right. You might think that because you've enhanced some raw interface and then threw a DHH sprinkle of JavaScript on it, that it's all still going to work, but there's a good chance it doesn't. Screen readers all execute JavaScript, at least the ones that people use. So when you enhance just a raw HTML thing, that's not what the screen reader gets like a lot of people think. They get the end result. So sometimes people will take labels and turn them into button sets and then like hide the labels and think, oh, people are still going to be able to tab to those labels even though I've hidden them. And then what we just saw here, turning internal links into tabs, that doesn't really work. So let's go back to the Bootstrap tabs again and see how this would work without all of this stuff. If I disable styles and disable JavaScript and turn this back on.
VoiceOver on Safari. Bootstrap tabs aren't very accessible. Frown window. Bootstrap tabs aren't very accessible. Frown. HTML content as keyboard focus.
Oh, sorry.
Interact with Bootstrap tabs aren't very accessible. Frown. HTML
Whatever.
content.
You'll see it.
Bullet. Visited internal link.
So
USA.
now, if I click on USA,
Press. Visited internal link. USA. The United States of America. USA. Commonly referred to muting.
jumps me straight to it and starts reading it. And then same if I go back and I hit Japan, jumps me straight to Japan and starts reading it, which is way different than what Bootstrap did to this page.
VoiceOver off.
So there's a better way, and it's called Way Aria. I did not even realize that pun until this very second. So it stands for the Web Accessibility Initiative, Accessible Rich Internet Applications. And you can go and see all the specs that they've got up there at that URL. The way that this works is HTML elements have inherent semantic roles on your page, like A is a link, H2 is a heading, etc. And screen readers use these roles to present your page to the user. But what happens when you do a href pound class button, LOL, I'm a button, and you're not actually a button, you're a link. And so the screen reader is going to say, it's a link to nowhere. Cool. Throw a roll button on there. Or I have a better idea, use a button. Even harder than those kind of situations are when you create an interface that doesn't have a tag. Then what do? Like there is no tab or tab panel HTML tag to just tell the screen reader, hey, this is how things work. And so you've got to come in and do that. So here, the Aria spec has a bunch of widgets, a bunch of components they've spec'd out and what the behavior should be. And so now you've got this coordination between us, the developers, the browsers, and the screen readers on certain roles and how those should be presented to the user. So tab is a role, and you see it says, oh, I should probably turn my...
It's 4 o'clock.
Thank you. So it tells you a lot of stuff. If a tab panel or item in a tab panel has focus, the associated tab is currently active. Authors must ensure elements with role tab are contained in or owned by an element with tab list. Author should ensure tab panel associated with currently active tab is perceivable, yada, yada, yada. So they've got all these specs about here's how your thing should work, and now if we're all in agreement, a screen reader can read it to the user in a way that makes sense. And so then we've got the tab list role, and they will illustrate out and I knew I should have stored that link somewhere. Anyway, they've got a better link that explains what the keyboard interaction should be and what they should do when things have focus. And so I made a thing in Ember. I talked about that I was going to use Angular as my demos, but the Angular UI tabs just were very structurally different than I expected them to be, and they didn't fit this spec at all, and I would have had to rewrite it from the beginning. So this is in Ember because I already wrote this thing. So now let's hear a tab interface that's implemented properly.
VoiceOver on Safari, IC tabs, interact with IC tabs, HTML content, USA, Japan, Texas, tab group. Japan, selected expanded tab, 2 of 3. Texas, selected expanded tab, 3 of 3.
So you see it's telling the user, this is a tab, and it's the selected tab.
You are currently on a tab, 3 of 3, inside.
Oops.
Texas, with 2 items, tab panel.
And so now you see I can just do a keyboard shortcut, and it jumps me down to the content of that tab.
Panel,
And
inside.
then I can come back
Text,
up.
Japan, USA, collapse tab, press, USA, collapse tab, 1 of, text, USA, selected expanded tab, 1 of 3, Japan, text, USA, with 2 items, tab panel.
And so now this tab panel is a landmark. And since the tab panel is a landmark, I don't actually have to read what's inside of it. I can just jump over it. So I get to a tab group, and I see, okay, this is a list of tabs. I hit next, it jumps to the tab panel, and then I can hit next, and it just jumps right over it. It won't do that on this page because I forgot to put content underneath. But now that I've got this tab panel, I can jump into it and then read it. And you notice with my keyboard, let me turn off VoiceOver. I can click this thing, and the tab is tabbable. And then once I'm in the tab, I use my arrow keys to bounce between them. But these other pieces are not tabbable. USA and Japan should not be keyboard tabbable. So there are specs to guide you on how to do this. And the way that these things get implemented, you just have to manage some attributes. You got to give it a role tab, keep track of aria selected, true, aria expanded, true, give it aria controls, which tab panel that this tab is controlling, and then a tab index of 0 to put this element in the tabosphere, as I call it, so that you can keyboard tab to it. Ember makes this really nice because you can just like bind attributes to properties and go and find element IDs without having to set them yourself. So anyway, that's IC tabs. Sometimes the specs are lacking. Sometimes they even have questions in the spec. Like for the tab spec, there's a spot that's talking about a keyboard shortcut, and it says, should we do this? How should we do this? And you're not sure. I call this Audible Interaction design. This isn't some like, I added these attributes, check, we're accessible, any more than bringing your designers in a room and coming up with an interface is like, check, we made this usable. It's very much the same thing as visual interaction design. The difference is that it's Audible Interaction design. So my Twitter profile says that I'm an AIX designer now. We'll see if that gets any new recruiter hits. So anyway, point is, you have to approach it the same way that you approach visual design, which means you need to learn to use a screen reader because not everyone is as lucky as us to have a blind developer on their team. I don't have to learn how to use it, though. Here's some random tips. Don't just throw aria attributes you don't understand to elements. You'll probably make it worse than doing nothing at all. The only thing worse than no accessibility is like really awful accessibility. A previous version of jQuery UI tab said that the tab's role was presentation, which tells the screen reader this thing doesn't matter. If you want to support keyboard or screen reader users, the two best combinations are JAWS, which is a screen reader, plus Internet Explorer, and NVDA, which is an open source screen reader plus Firefox on Windows. Those are like, pretty much everybody uses those. But VoiceOver plus Safari is probably more convenient for a lot of us, and it's pretty solid for general development. I rarely have something not work in my environment and then send it off to, his name's Aaron, send it off to Aaron and him say that it's busted. If you got visually impaired users, ask them for feedback. I'm sure they would be happy to help. And then when you run into accessibility issues, send a pull request and try to fix them. Two quick things. This tweet almost brings me to tears sometimes. And finally, a word from an angry Tim Cook. When we work on making our devices accessible by the blind, I don't consider the bloody ROI. That's it. Thank you.